All right, so welcome to our Cancer Killer and Prevention Workshop. My name is Dr. Ben Sweeney. So, just as a heads up, we typically do this particular workshop, we normally do this on a Saturday. We rent out a church. It's a 3-hour program, so I'm going to do my best to get this done in an hour or less. That's the promise, kind of. So I would ask, we'll save all the questions till the end, and because I do tend to get sidetracked and go off on tangents, so my staff will tell you that, or they'll say that I like to talk, and my wife would say that I like to hear myself talk, both of which are probably true. So we're going to get started. And then, with cancer, so we want to make this educational. We want to provide you quite a bit of value, or as much value as we can. I do want to apologize that this presentation is somewhat slide heavy. I don't like using slides, but with cancer, we got to use a lot of information and detail. So there's that, but we want to make it informative and educational and hopefully a little bit entertaining. And the sad thing is there's nothing entertaining about cancer. There's just nothing entertaining about it. It's sad, it's tragic, it's horrific. Raise your hand if you've been affected by cancer, right? In your family, in your personal life. Raise your other hand if it's someone in your community, in your church, in your friend group, in your kids' school, right? It's all of us, right? We've all been affected, and the statistics are pretty clear. It's 1 out of 2 men and 1 out of 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer. So it's literally half the population is going to be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their life. So it's really essentially all of us. So the war on cancer. In 1971, Richard Nixon got up with all the other old fat white guys, and he said, "We're gonna win the war on cancer. We're gonna win the war. If we just have $100 million, we could win the war on cancer." And we've spent literally trillions of dollars. We spend $100 million every few months on cancer, and where are we at? So instead of me telling you, let me play this quick video.
The time has come, America, to launch an intensive campaign to find a cure for cancer.
Our recovery plan will invest in electronic health records. It will launch a new effort to conquer a disease that has touched the life of nearly every American by seeking a cure for cancer in our time.
People will look back at this period of history and they'll laugh at it, just the way we look back at the way they used to bleed patients.
Nothing we've done in a century has substantially reduced the death rate of various cancers.
They will burn it, or cut it out, or they'll try to poison it.
Anytime human beings try lots of things, a lot of them are not going to work.
We are a total failure.
Heavy trading today in the biopharma sector.
Blockbuster cancer drug Erbitux racked up nearly $425 million in sales.
You have this entire industry that is not going to just pack up and go away. This is a business.
The treatment that they wanted for Thomas, his quality of life would be non-existent.
You know that this poison they're putting in you can cause other cancers. And what is it doing to your body?
If the guys that make it say, we don't know if it's safe, but we'll put you in prison if you don't do it, what's that all about?
That's the scary part. You go through all of that, and you never know.
People have tried to bring effective new treatments and have been shut down.
Friday, the Food and Drug Administration raided the doctor's office, seizing patients' files and other documents.
These guys are part of a club, and that club has nothing to do with protecting the American people.
The first director of the American Cancer Society worked hand in glove with the tobacco industry, and they were running the Cancer Society like a massive advertising campaign.
You're the American Cancer Society. Don't you want cancer to be prevented in America?
You got an idea that's way off the map, and you say, I want to test this, they'll throw it away.
This is Thomas using alternative therapy, and this is conventional therapy, 2 months worth. Who decides?
This is a cesspool, and the American people are left helpless.
We started out on the wrong foot, we stayed on the wrong foot for 100 years, and we are paying the price.
All right, sorry about the audio. We have a wet laptop, so we had to do the best we could. Yeah, so that's a little overview of where we're at with cancer. And 3 things before we start. Number 1, when it comes to talking about cancer and implicating that there's a lifestyle component to it and there's choices that could be made that would prevent it or reverse it, I know there's a lot of sensitivity around that topic, so I want you to know my heart. In no way, shape, or form do I want this to come off as sounding like we're pointing the finger or placing blame or shaming people about it. That is not my intention at all whatsoever. Secondly is I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not an oncologist. I'm not a cancer researcher. Some people's opinion, I'm not even a real doctor anyway. So we know what opinions are like. So I'm essentially just a reporter. And that being said, this information is for educational purposes only. Please consult your doctor. It's not intended to prevent, cure, or to treat any blah, 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 right? So now we got the disclaimer out of the way. We can sort of let it rip. And then lastly, question everything. Like, don't take my word for it. Don't take your doctor's word for it. Don't take your pediatrician's word. Who's responsible for our health? We are. So who has to be the expert when it comes to our health? We do. And raise your hand. I don't like that. Raise your hand if you don't like that. I don't like that. I would love to live in a world where we could just trust the science and listen to the experts. You know, we've heard that a lot lately. But quite frankly, we don't. So we have to be the expert when it comes to our own health care, especially when it comes to prevention and nutrition and exercise and diet and the right supplements and taking care of our spine. We have to be the expert. Otherwise, we have no chance. So question everything. Everything we say. It would please me none more than if you took copious notes, take everything we say, go research and Medscape and PubMed and talk to your doctor and ask them, find out, figure out the research, because that means you care, and that's how we get answers. We have to be empowered to take control of our own health. So where are we now? 1 in 2 men and 1 out of 3 women will develop cancer at some point in their lives. And that statistic is old, and the problem is getting much, much worse. Canada, the #1 cause of death in Canada is cancer, and they have free health care. Like, they've got socialized medicine, free health care, and their #1 killer is still cancer. We look at 2020 alone, there was 1.8 million new cases of cancer in the U.S. Magically, we didn't hear about that in 2020 because there was so much noise around another disease and another disorder that cancer's kind of taken a back seat. Cancer is the second leading cause of death in children, ages 5 to 14, following accidents. Was that true 100 years ago? I think cancer was the #2 cause of death in our kids 100 years ago. And we're going to talk about genes and genetics and how everything's blamed on genes and how that's garbage. But just imagine, we'll get to that part. Global cancer rates are expected to rise more than 75% by the year 2020 or 2030. So 9 more years, 8 more years, it's going to almost double. So it's not important that you memorize all these numbers, but these are cancer statistics from the American Cancer Society over the last 8 years. And if you look at the bottom, you have new cases, deaths per year, and then deaths per day. So the new cases, 8.1% increase in new cases over that 8-year period. And if you look at deaths per year, you see a 4.3% increase, and about the same for the deaths per day. It's just a math formula. So are we winning the war on cancer? Clearly not. It's getting worse. We dump more and more money into research and drugs and radiographic equipment and early detection, and we're still getting worse every single year. So that little pink ribbon, we're in Breast Cancer Awareness Month. As you guys all know, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Magically this year, I don't hear about it as much as we have in previous years, but it is still. And you watch the football game and you see the football players with the pink socks and the pink wristbands, and the referees have the pink whistles, and we do the Susan G. Komen Walk for the Cure every year. And I'm all about a survivor, an overcomer, victory. I love cause marketing. I love it. I think it's amazing. But when Susan G. Komen says on her website that consumption of fruits and vegetables has absolutely no impact on cancer rates, something's wrong. When all that money they raise every year, when none of it goes to the victims and the people that are suffering with cancer, and it all goes to administrative costs and drug therapies and drug research, something's wrong with that. And then when KFC has their big fat pink bucket of fried chicken, because they're cashing in on it too, and Progresso soup makes their soup cans with this carcinogen-laced liner, but it's pink on the outside so they can make $1.02, pink M&Ms. So it's all just a big marketing campaign. So I hate pink. Hate it, especially during October. I'll wear it for Easter. Like I've got a pink shirt I'll wear for Easter, but I never do it during October because of what it stands for. And it's not about the people. Cancer, especially breast cancer, is not pretty, it's not pink, it's not feminine, it's not, there's nothing pretty, it's horrific, it's awful, it's terrifying and it's scary, and the system is not set up to treat the root cause. So here's the cure. If you want to never get it, or if you want to reverse it, there's a few things that you've got to know. Number one, we got to know what it is, and we got to know what causes it. Those are the two keys, and those are not ever talked about in the cancer industry. Some of you guys have been diagnosed with cancer. I would be hard-pressed to believe that when you went in and sat through your consultation, they did a thorough explanation of actually what it is and actually what causes it. It's just, let's get you on the program, let's start it. And here's the thing too, I'm not against drugs and surgery. May sound like I am, but by and large I'm not. They have value. There's value for drugs. If I have a 10-pound tumor on my kidney, take out my kidney. Like I don't, right, I got another one, right? So there's a time and a place. Sadly, that time and place is way too often, and it comes with way too many risky side effects, and at the end of the day, it's not moving the needle. We're still getting sicker. So here's what it's not. Cancer is not your genetics. Raise your hand if you've been told that cancer is a genetic disease. We've all heard that. If you look on Wikipedia, they will show you that, or the definition of cancer, they'll talk about how it's a genetic disease. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to fly in the face of everything we've always been told about cancer. So who am I to, well, my oncologist told me it was a genetic disease. How are you going to sit here and tell me it's not? So what are your qualifications? But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. So there's a science called epigenetics. Anyone heard of epigenetics? It's becoming more common. It's control above the genome. It's essentially the things we do in our life, the things we're exposed to, or the things that we expose our bodies to, that control the way our genes get expressed. So our genes don't cause disease, it's our lifestyle that causes our genes to be read wrong. Does that make sense? We're going to prove that in a minute. So this is the causes of cancer. And if you look, 90 to 95% is environmental. And these are all statistics pulled from the American Cancer Society. I mean, even they admit, even though there's still some underpinnings of, oh, this is just genetic, because you see the gene-targeted therapies and the gene-targeted testing. But 90 to 95% of it's environmental. Between 5 and 10% is genetic. And really, honestly, that number is probably more like 2%. Those are called monogenetic diseases, which are basically caused directly by the gene. It's a very, very, very small percentage. And you look at the environmental causes, you have diet, which somehow they only say that's 30 to 35%. I would argue that. Obesity, which is obviously caused by bad diet. Infections, which you're more susceptible to if you have a bad diet. Others, tobacco, obviously those are the givens. So I want you to consider for a moment that you are an animal. I'm an animal, you're an animal, we're all animals, right? I remember back in school, we would have to go to a totally separate building if we wanted to study animal physiology. We'd have to go to a different area down the hallway to a different building to study animals, but to study humans, we'd go to another building where we would do our cadaver studies and cut up. I always wondered, like, why are we're never treating us as part of the animal kingdom. Imagine if we took a chimpanzee from the wild. We pulled him out of the jungle, out of the forest, and we put him in America, put him in Franklin, and we gave him the standard American diet, gave him a donut and Starbucks for breakfast, gave him a cheeseburger with fries for dinner, gave him a pizza or a big old bowl of pasta for dinner, no exercise. He's got racing through traffic because he has to get his kids to the soccer game, and then there's stress, taxes are due. Does the health of that chimpanzee, does he get healthier or sicker? How many times out of 1,000? 1,000 out of 1,000. So how much sense would it make to look at that chimpanzee and say, you know what? We need to invest a lot of drugs and time and energy to figure out what disease he has, how do we name it, and then how do we concoct the right cocktail of drugs to treat it or surgeries or figure out which organs to cut out. That makes no sense. That makes no sense for a chimpanzee, but that's exactly what we do for us. Are any of you guys in the room old enough to remember when the fish in the Great Lakes were dying? Does anybody remember that? It's like late 70s. the fish in the Great Lakes were dying, so they were dumping poisons into the Great Lakes, and all the fish were washing up on the shore, and they had tumors, and they were obese, and they were sick, and then the birds that were eating those fish their eggs were brittle, so they're worried about the extinction of the birds and the fish in the area. So how much sense would it make to say, you know what, those fish are getting sick, those birds are getting sick because of bad genetics? I think it's bad genes. So the solution is we're going to dump a bunch of drugs into the lakes. Let's dump a bunch of drugs in the lakes. We'll set up little fish hospitals on the shore. So then when they wash up, if they're not dead, we'll get these little fish instruments and we'll repair them and put them back to health. How much sense does that make? It makes none. Why does it make sense for humans, but it doesn't make sense for every other species that belongs to the animal kingdom? And that's where the problem lies. You know, we've been told to butt out when it comes to our health, just to leave it to the experts. But we have to be the expert. And until we start looking at our lives and our bodies through the eyes of a biologist versus the eyes of a pathologist, the attempts we make to get well just are not going to work. So what is cancer? So you're made up of trillions of cells, between 40 and 70 trillion cells. You're just a big old hunk of cells that moves through space. And those cells have a life cycle. And at the end of their life cycle, and this is brilliant, God's design is amazing. The more I learn about it, the more I'm amazed. But that life cycle comes to an end, and it goes through a process called apoptosis. Everybody say apoptosis. That's a fun word, right? So apoptosis is programmed cell death. Basically, the body knows when the cell's done, when it was lived its life, it commits suicide. That's a beautiful regenerative process that we go through. Cancer cells don't do that. Their ability to turn themselves off gets hampered, and we'll show you why, and then those cancer cells continue to proliferate. So a lot of the information that we're going to talk about, I stole directly from this guy. I probably nerded out on him for about 50 hours, just tons of YouTube videos. He gets real deep into the science and the metabolism, but Dr. Thomas Seymour, he basically teaches the metabolic cause of cancer. So we know it's not genetic, so then what is it, right? And he talks about it and makes a very, very good case, and he's not the only one. There's hundreds and thousands of other doctors, and this is going back to the 1930s, which we're actually going to talk about in a moment. But he talks about it's a metabolic disease, not a genetic disease. So here's a complex drawing. That's the cell on the left, and that's the thing called the mitochondria. Raise your hand if you've heard of the mitochondria. So mitochondria, if you go back to high school biology, you know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's where we derive energy. So the mitochondria basically use oxygen through a process called oxidative phosphorylation. Not important that you know that, but this is being streamed, so I hope I sound smart. So they use oxygen for fuel. So healthy cells use oxygen for fuel, and then they convert that to energy, that thing called ATP, which I will not get into. So here, do you want to go through like complex metabolic processes and metabolic description, or do you want to like sort of the simplified version of it? Okay, thank God, because I'd rather not go that way. So here's some of the studies. Here's the testing that they did, and here's kind of a summation of it. So they basically took a normal cell. So in a normal healthy cell, you have a healthy mitochondria, and you have a healthy nucleus. You guys know where the nucleus is? That's where the DNA, the double helix is located, the genetic information. The genes are inside the nucleus. So they take a healthy cell, they reproduce it, and it turns into two normal cells. Does that make sense? And you take a tumor cell that has a damaged mitochondria and has damaged nucleus or sick cancerous nucleus, and that makes tumor cells. With me so far? Cool. So you take a normal cytoplasm, which is the mitochondria. Essentially you have healthy mitochondria, but you put cancerous DNA, cancerous nucleus, cancerous genetic material inside the cell, and it creates normal cells. So if the DNA material, if the genes are what code for cancer, then if you put the genes from a cancer cell into a healthy cell, it should make them cancerous, right? But it did just the opposite. Those cells actually turned into healthy cells. And then they did the other study where they took the tumorous, cancerous mitochondria, and they put those into a tumor cytoplasm or to a tumor cell, and they took a healthy cell's nucleus, they put it into a tumor cell, and it either died or it created more tumor cells. So by flip-flopping the mitochondria, that's what determined whether it would be a healthy cell or whether it would be a cancer cell. So it's all about the mitochondria. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's not about the genes. It's not, the genes are a downstream epigenetic effect. It's about the mitochondria. And we'll talk about how that works. So mitochondria, this goes back a long time. This is Otto Warburg. So his research is from the 1930s. He's got an amazing story. So he was caught up in Nazi Germany. He was Jewish and he was openly homosexual. But Hitler brought him on board. I mean, that would have been two reasons. He would have got rid of him like right out of the gate. But he brought him on as part of his team because Hitler was terrified of cancer. That's one of the few things he seemed to be scared of because his mom died of cancer. The only person he ever actually loved died of cancer. So he was so terrified of cancer, he brought Otto Warburg, protected him, and then brought him on as part of his team. And his research, he found four things. It's the Warburg Theory of cancer. That cancer arises from damage to cellular respiration. So when your cells are not able to use oxygen and they are forced to ferment sugar, that's when those cells become cancerous. So cancer cells are sugar burners. They have to have sugar, and we'll talk a little more about that in a second. So you damage the cellular respiration, and then glucose fermentation actually compensates for the lack of being able to use oxygen. So you're now using sugar instead of using oxygen. And then respiratory damage eventually becomes irreversible, and then those cells continue to ferment even in the presence of oxygen. That's one of the unique characteristics. So this has been around a long time. This is from the 1930s, and he won the Nobel Prize for that research. But as the war ended and the petrochemical industry started taking off, they replaced his theories with the drug-based, gene-based targeted therapies that we have today. So he just kind of got lost in the wash. So of all the slides that are on here, this is probably the key. If there's one slide you want to memorize, it would be this one. So the top thing, the cause of cancer and all disease is when the cells become toxic, deficient, or have a decrease in function. So let me say that again. The cause of cancer and all disease, did I say all disease? All disease is when your cells, when you become toxic, deficient, or you have a decrease in function. That's it. And we'll talk about the steps to that on the way. So the characteristics of a healthy cell, they use oxygen for fuel. Like we said, healthy cells use oxygen. They do not use sugar. They live in a slightly alkaline environment, and they need proper nerve supply. If you cut the nerve to a healthy cell, it dies. And you look at cancer cells, well, it's just the opposite. They use sugar for fuel. They don't need oxygen. They live in an acidic environment. Most cancers, not all, but most cancers live in an acidic environment, and they do not need proper nerve supply to survive. They're rogue cells. They do their thing on their own. It's been said that one cancer cell is smarter than 1,000 scientists, which is really not true, because cancer cells aren't really particularly smart. They're just using sugar. They're just using the fuel that they're more properly adapted to. So here's the thing. Cancer doesn't make us sick. Let me say that again. Cancer does not make us sick. It's a sick body that creates the environment for cancer. Cancer doesn't make you sick. It's a sick body that allows the hospitable conditions for a cancer cell to thrive. Does that make sense? So cancer is a symptom. It's not the disease, it's just the symptom. And that's the way we have to start viewing this. So we look at the traditional system. I could spend an hour dogging the traditional system. And again, it has some value, although not much. There's 5 traditional mainstream standard of care treatment modalities. There's chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, drugs, and transplantation. And it is currently illegal to treat cancer with anything other than those 5. You could lose your license, you could go to jail. That's why when people want to get alternative cancer therapies, they go to Mexico, they go to Spain, they go out of the country. And if you're going to use alternative therapies, they have to be used in conjunction with that chemo and radiation. Dr. Seyfried, the guy that I was telling you about before, so he uses a very strict ketogenic diet. So he strips all the sugar out of the system, uses a ketogenic diet, basically starves the cancer cells, and then he also uses very low-dose chemo. It's a drug called DON, but that actually kills the cancer. And then he cycles that with intermittent fasting, all of which we'll talk a little bit more. You guys anybody done intermittent fasting? It's privileged starvation, right? That was a joke. I've been told so many times how unfunny I am, but I can't stop trying. And the real gist is cancer caused by a lack of any of those? Like is a headache caused from a lack of aspirin? You know, are sinus problems from a lack of Zyrtec? Is cancer from a lack of, no, it's just treating the symptom. So chemo, a lot of people don't know this, it actually originated in World War I. So when the soldiers went over, they were using a mustine mustard gas, and what they found was not only did it kill the enemy, but on our troops, it actually killed a lot of their fast-growing cells. So their hair would fall out, they would lose their eyebrows, like the internal lining of their stomach would be decimated. So they found, like, well, you know, if it does that, then maybe it kills cancer cells. And it really does do a good job of killing cancer cells. The goal of chemo is to kill the cancer right before it kills you. That's typically the goal. And they tend to kind of ferret that out a little bit. But so the problem is most tumor cells or most cancer cells are very slow growing. Most cancers take decades, years, sometimes 2 decades. So it only kills the faster growing cancer cells. And here's some statistics on the US, basically how effective is chemo at allowing people to live to 5 years? How does it affect the 5-year survival rate? And you look at all the various cancers along that bottom column, but you look at the bottom, there's a 2.1% benefit to the overall 5-year survival rate. It's unbelievable. So outside of a few cancers like lymphomas and leukemias, mostly childhood leukemias, and testicular cancers, almost none. And that's the sad reality. And the problem is we put all our eggs in that basket. If I get the diagnosis, and we'll talk about what to do, like what would I do if I got it? We'll talk about that. But a 2.1% benefit to the 5-year survival rate. If you look at Australia, their numbers are like 2.0%. So it's basically the same everywhere you go. It's not helping people live that much longer. And every one of us has heard that story of someone who went through chemo, went through radiation, and then they made it to their 5-year mark, which are termed cancer-free. By the way, if you make it 5 years, you'll always forever be known as a cancer survivor. Even if it comes back in year 6 and kills you, you're still labeled as a cancer survivor. But we all know those people, they went through chemo, radiation, they did great for a while, and then it came back with a vengeance, and nothing would touch it. There was nothing they could do. The old therapies didn't work, and they were dead within a matter of months. Because it doesn't kill the cancer stem cell. It kills the daughter cell, which is the bulk of the tumor, which is the easy, low-hanging fruit for the chemo. So the tumor shrinks, but the stem cells go dormant, and they wait. They wait for the next opportunity. They wait for you to keep living that same lifestyle. And then they come back with a vengeance, and now they're smarter because they know how to adapt to the previous chemo. It's like antibiotic resistance. It's very similar to that. Side effects, and this list is abbreviated: deafness, destroys the skin, heart damage, chemo brain, neurological damage, so like neuropathies and peripheral neuromas, bleeding, secondary cancers, because 100% of chemotherapy is toxic, and most chemotherapy is carcinogenic. So we're using something that causes cancer to treat cancer, and that's the mainstream standard of care. Loss of taste, blindness, impotence, organ damage, chemotoxicity, poison. We know suicide rates skyrocket if you've gone through chemo, weight loss, poisoning, and death. It was interesting, Dr. Seyfried had a statement in one of his videos. He said, they said, well, why do some people do really good with chemo? You know, because some people, we all know people who've gone through it and they're fine, right? They went through a round of 2 or 3 of chemo and they seem to be healthy. His theory was it was the starvation. It was basically because when you're on chemo, you can't eat, you're vomiting what you do eat, you can't keep anything down. So the calorie restriction was actually probably one of the primary drivers to why it actually killed the cancer. And that's theory, but makes some sense. And 100% of chemotherapy is considered poisonous. And again, I'm not against chemo. Like, there's cases, there's times and places where it's effective. And there's a thing now too, you guys ever heard of insulin potentiated therapy, IPT therapy? It's basically kind of and they don't do it in America, of course. You got to go to Spain for the most part to get that. But they'll use a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of chemo, just a minuscule amount. Most people don't even lose their hair. They don't get sick. They almost have no symptoms. But they'll give them a bolus of insulin so it lowers their blood sugar, and then they'll give the chemo, and the cancer cells just take it up. They ravage the chemo, and it incorporates it so quickly into the cell that it actually kills mostly the cancer cells without the healthy cells. So there's so many therapies like that hyperbaric oxygen, the list goes on and on. Surgery. So when you cut a tissue, what happens? If I cut your hand, what would happen? Bleeds. When a tumor bleeds, it spreads. You know that? So you cut a tumor, bleeds, you're spreading the tumor. So not to say there's no time and place, but anytime you cut cancer and you bleed, you're spreading the tumor. Increases cell adhesion, it suppresses immune function, which is the main reason we got in that situation in the first place, and promotes angiogenesis, which is the formation of new blood vessels. That's one thing cancers need is they're voracious sugar eaters. Cancer cells are obligate glucose metabolizers, which they have 8 to 10 times more receptors for sugar than a healthy cell. So they have to have sugar. They create new little highways of arteries and veins to get themselves more food, and it stimulates inflammation. Radiation weakens the tissue, it burns the tissue. Anytime you burn a benign cell, you're gonna enhance its malignancy. You're gonna make it more malignant by damaging the mitochondria. And then here's a stat, because people say, what about mammograms? Active cancer cells double roughly every 90 days. So at 90 days, you've got 2 cells. At a year, you've got 16. So it goes 2, 4, 8, 16. And then about 2 years, you got 250. 3 years, 4,000. About 4 years, 65,000. 5 years, you got about 1 million. 6 years, 16 million. 7 years, you got about 270 million. And by about 8 years, you're in the billions. So cancer cells are generally detectable by mammogram around that stage. So when you had the cancer for roughly 8 years, that's about the time and place that the mammogram can actually detect it. And if you go another 2 years, another 40 doublings, then you're looking at lethal. Like you're kind of past it. So there's a very small window at which you can catch it and then you can treat it before it's too late. And if you look at the mammogram, luckily that's one thing that's good about being a man, is I may not have to go through that, is they compress the breast tissue, which is the worst thing you would ever do to an active cancer tumor, is squish an active tumor, because that's going to promote spreading. And then you're going to irradiate it, which we know radiation can trigger malignancy, at a rate that's significantly higher than chest x-rays, or certainly the x-rays that we take in the office. And there was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine several years ago. They found that it takes 2,500 mammograms to save 1 life. So you got to put 2,500 women through mammograms to save 1 life. You'll have about 1,000 women that'll get a scare. They'll have a cancer they thought they had, but whew, turns out I didn't. You'll have about 5 women that are going to be treated for cancer that they never had to save 1 life. Now, is that to say that mammograms don't save lives? No, but not at the rate we're told, but that's the standard of care. So what do? If you're not going to do mammograms, because if you go to your primary care and say, I'm done with mammograms, they're going to look at you like you've got a horn sticking out of your head. So we do full body and particularly breast thermography. We have a partner we work with across the interstate, Victoria Bailey. She has a thermography machine where it measures heat. So she scans your entire body and she looks for hot spots. And those, because cancer cells love sugar, they tend to be much hotter than the surrounding healthy tissue. If you find something on the thermograph, then you do an ultrasound of the area, gives you a little more detail. If you find something on the ultrasound, then you go through an MRI. No radiation, more detail, less damage, no risk. Does that make sense? So that's the progression. You go thermograph, ultrasound, MRI. That's the progression. So 3 steps to preventing and or reversing cancer. So number 1, we got to get to the cause. We got to figure out what's causing the cancer, because if you just go in and you irradiate the tumor or you cut out the tumor, but you don't fix the conditions that cause it in the first place, then we're kind of in the same boat, right? And again, there's a time and place, but we got to fix the cause. specifically and safely starve and kill the cancer. And we're going to talk about some protocols that seem very, very strict if you have cancer, and there's some that are, you know, a little less strict if your goal is to prevent it from ever happening. But here's the bad news, and half of you may leave after we say this. We all have cancer. Raise your hand if you're a cancer patient. Like, we all have it, right? It's in every organ of our body. It's in my prostate, it's in your breast, it's in your colon. If we dissected my 14-year-old daughter's organs, if we look closely enough, we would find cancer cells in all of her organs. Now, most people have 1,000 to 100,000 cancer cells, but they don't have cancer because the immune system takes control. It does its job. It finds it, seeks it out, and kills it. It does what it's supposed to do. But cancer is actually a normal part of the natural life cycle of the body. So it's not, do you have cancer or don't you? It's where is your immune system in its capacity to keep cancer under control. Does that make sense? It's a different way of looking at it. Rebuild and strengthen the immune system. None of which is talked about in traditional cancer therapy. They don't even talk about it. They don't talk about the immune system's role in getting it, and they don't talk about the process to repair the immune system once you're done with the therapies. So how do we kill cancer? So there's a weakness. We know that cancer cells individually have their own genetic fingerprint. So basically all cancer cells almost have their own similar own differentiated genetics. So would it make more sense to figure out drug therapies that target each individual cancer cell's different genetic fingerprint, or would it make more sense to find like what they all have in common and target that? And if you know more about your enemy, you know where they sleep, you know what they eat, you know their strategies, you know their next move, then you have a better chance of killing the enemy. And that's what this is. So you want to starve the cancer. First thing we got to do is eliminate all sugars. And that sounds like, oh, all sugars? If you have cancer, we're talking all sugars. Like even foods that convert quickly to sugar, which are mainly grains, bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastries, donuts, biscuits, oatmeal. Yeah, oatmeal. Corn, like even corn is a grain. It's not a vegetable, it's a grain. So we got to eliminate all those foods that convert very quickly to sugar because they spike insulin. If you're going to stay cancer-free or you're going to reverse the cancer you have to get your insulin levels down as low as humanly possible, as safely as possible. So you have to starve it of sugars and you have to starve it of glutamine. Part of the reason that they disavowed and they ridiculed Dr. Warburg back in the 30s is because he didn't realize at the time, he didn't have the technology to realize that if you just starve the cancer cells of sugar, they can ferment glutamine, which is it's an amino acid. So if you're really going to go at this, you have to eliminate glutamine, which is, so you're going to have to watch your protein consumption, and then you also have to starve it of the sugars. You have to cut off cancer's blood supply, so anti-angiogenesis, and we do that through herbs and spices and phytochemicals and mushrooms and cordyceps. There's a lot of variations. There's a list a mile long of things to do to stop that process. Fix the environment. We have to move from acidic to alkaline, and the biggest thing we can do with that is reducing our intake of sugar. Sugar is highly acidic, changes your pH almost immediately. Inducing apoptosis through epigenetic manipulation. Everybody say that 5 times fast, right? So basically you're triggering the cancer cells or the sicker cells to kill themselves by changing the way the genes get expressed. That's healthy lifestyle. That's all it is. Healthy is exercise. So fermentation. So we talked about cancer cells like to use fermentation. They basically ferment sugars. What else do we know that uses fermentation? Beer. That we drink? Beer, yeast, right? What do you do, like what do the prisoners do if they're going to make their own, they call it what, Pruno? Is that what the prisoners call their own alcohol, right? So they take a bag and they'll put like yeast in the bag with water, and then they'll add sugar, and then what do they do to it? They put it in like a cold, dark place, and they let it sit. They don't shake it up. They don't move it around. Kind of like most Americans. So you eat a bunch of sugar and grain, and then you sit yourself in a cold, dark room watching Netflix, and you don't move around at all because that would mess up the fermentation process. So we're basically fermenting ourselves all day long with our typical American lifestyles. That's why exercise is so important in this. When we're talking about the process. Balance hormones to eliminate estrogen dominance. We saw a major spike 30 years ago when they were putting all these women on estrogen, like left and right, over the counter or prescription with creams and pills, and the rates of cancer went through the roof. So we have to buffer estrogen dominance. Correct nutritional deficiencies. Remember the cause of cancer and all disease is when your cells become toxic, deficient, or they decrease in function. That's the name of the game. And then employ cytotoxic botanical compounds, basically herbs, spices, mushrooms, phytochemicals, all those things. And then remedy inflammation. Inflammation is the name of the game, probably the primary driver of cancer. And the good news is, if you fix that, you fix almost every other chronic disease that you need to worry about. COVID. We know that the cytokine storm that everybody talks about, that's the reason the sickest get so sick when they go to the hospital, other than the fact that they rush to the ventilators far too quick. That's a whole other hour we can talk about. But it's that cytokine storm because the person's already so inflamed and they're vitamin D deficient and their cells, their mitochondria don't function properly. That's why most people that die from that have so many, like 3.6 comorbidities per person. That's the average. So you remedy inflammation, heal and protect mitochondria. If there's one thing I want you to cherish when you leave here is you have to cherish your mitochondria. Like your little baby mitochondria. Hopefully you have a whole new appreciation for how much they benefit you. That is the name of the game. So again, and I'll put this on every slide if I have to. The cause of cancer and all diseases is when cells become toxic, deficient, or they have a decrease in function. It's basically interference. And when you interfere with these 5 pillars, you are moving, you're fast forwarding down a steep slope toward cancer. Emotions and mindset. We know that when you have toxic emotions and you have a toxic mindset, or even a deficiency in healthy emotions, it always cracks me up, like when drug companies will say, we took 1,000 healthy subjects and we tested them with XYZ drug. Were they really healthy? Like, what do you mean by healthy? Do you mean they can do 5 chin-ups? Can they jog for a mile without stopping? Do they have a sense of, what's their diet look like? How's their sleep? Do they have a sense of belonging and mattering to a community? Do they have a relationship with Christ? Like, what do you mean by healthy, right? All they mean is you don't have the disease that they're actually studying for. So if they say they had 1,000 healthy subjects and they tested them with the blood pressure medication, all they mean is that group of people didn't currently have the disease that they were studying. So this whole double-blind randomized control, it's really a farce. Because how do you define healthy? Nerve supply, we'll talk a little bit about that, a deficiency in nerve supply. Nutrition goes both ways. You can have toxic or deficient nutrition. Oxygen and lean muscle mass, there's a deficiency there. And toxicity, I didn't have a good one for that one, so I just did toxicity, right? Toxicity. Those are the 5 pillars. So you address those 5 pillars, and it'd be good to inventory. Kind of look at your life and see where you're at, and say, you know, on a 1 to 10 scale, where am I at with emotions and mindset, and where am I at with my nervous system, and where am I at with my nutrition? Just kind of grade yourself and see where your starting point is. Because again, it's progress, not perfection. It's not a game of doing this perfectly. It's just moving in the right direction. So the essentials of every cell, essentials of every one of you. There's 6, and they're essential for 2 reasons. They're essential because they're essential, and you got to have them. And they're essential because your body can't make them. You have to get them from your environment or from your diet. So the first essential is 22 amino acids, antioxidants, fatty acids, live enzymes, vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals. Where do we get all that stuff? Food. Fruits and veggies, right? Healthy fruits and veggies, and from healthy meat. Healthy meat from healthy animals, right? So the health of the animal makes all the difference. So if you're looking at grass-fed versus like conventional feedlot animals, which is kind of what we are, we're kind of like feedlot animals, right? We sort of like eat corn all day and we graze and take hormones and vaccines and antibiotics, right? We're literally like feedlot cattle, right, for the most part. So if you compare those animals, I always wonder, like, if we took like hunter-gatherers and they dropped us off in a hunter-gatherer tribe, would we survive? Like, no, I used to think they would eat us, but they don't eat junk food. They'd just probably like burn you or like use you for a bear trap, right? But we're hunter-gatherers. We're literally wild animals living in captivity, but we've gotten this notion that somehow we're not like other animals. We can eat Cheetos and corn dip, and like all this garbage. And you know, you ever seen that little thing with the like the dogs sitting around the poker table smoking cigars, playing cards, right? Like, why does that seem ridiculous for them, but perfectly normal for us? Like, how is that any more ridiculous for them than it is for us? Because we're animals. We're part of the animal kingdom. So that's where we get that. So there's a few things we want to try to avoid. And we'll talk about at the end how we can make this simple and smooth and easy. But there's the 3 foods we want to try to avoid. We call it turning off your GPS. G, P, and S. Because if you're eating foods out of the GPS category, then your GPS is set toward cancer and heart disease and diabetes and autoimmune disorders and acne and ADHD and autism and arthritis and how many A's we got? Right? So like we're literally headlong diving toward all those diseases, right? So the G stands for grains. Bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastries, oatmeal, biscuits. She just dropped her head like, oh, what am I going to eat now? And that's the common response. And the key is moving away from those. Now, at the end of the day, is a piece of like whole wheat Ezekiel, you know, sprouted bread better than like white Wonder Bread? Yeah, of course, absolutely, right? But you guys know the glycemic index? What's higher on the glycemic index? A piece of whole wheat bread or a Snickers bar? Yeah, you know where I'm going with this, right? No, whole wheat bread. Whole wheat bread is higher on the glycemic index than a Snickers bar is. So here's another one. What's higher on the glycemic index? A piece of wheat bread, not your whole wheat bread, but your wheat bread, or table sugar. So wheat bread turns to sugar quicker than table sugar turns to sugar. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. Go Google it. So bread turns to sugar. Like anything you eat that turns to mush, like when you eat it turns to like mush, that's sugar. So the amylase that's in our saliva breaks down that carbohydrate and turns it immediately into sugar. And forget about complex carbs versus starch. It's carb. Our ancestors didn't eat a big bowl of pasta. Like carbs were impossible to find 2,000 years ago. They couldn't find them. And people say, well, Jesus ate bread and Jesus drank wine. Well, he was not eating Wonder Bread, and he certainly wasn't drinking like Yellowtail, right? Totally different. And grains, remember the song, Amber Waves of Grain? Let's sing it. Amber, yeah, right? So it used to be like 8 feet tall. It would wave in the wind. Now we have this 18-inch genetically modified hybrid GM blah, blah, blah crop. It's not even, it contains proteins that never existed in bread before, like gluten and gliadin, which are highly inflammatory. Even if you're not celiac, those 2 proteins are highly inflammatory. The minute you eat them, your body feels like it's being attacked. It triggers the immune system. Oh my God, we got an invader. So you're literally using your immune system to attack your food. And we're going to talk a minute about how that creates leaky gut in just a second. And then, where are we at? G? Yeah. G. Told you, I go off on tangents. P. P stands for processed. Processed food, and namely processed dairy. So processed food we know, like Taco Bell's bad for us, right? Ramen noodles, bad for us. Those are bad. But the dairy's the biggie. And that's where if I didn't lose half the room on grains, I'm going to lose the other half on dairy. We are the only animals that continue to drink milk after infancy. You realize that? And we don't even drink our own species. Like, we're not even drinking like an animal that's, a couple hundred pounds. We're drinking like a 2,000-pound cow's milk, which their milk is designed to put like 200 or 300 pounds on a calf within a year. How much weight does mom's milk put on a baby in a year? Like 10 pounds, right? Maybe 15, whatever. So, and the problem is too, we take this milk that, by itself is probably not bad at the end of the world. Anyone ever had raw dairy? You had raw dairy? Yeah. It's illegal. You're all breaking the law. So you used to have to go to you have to meet like your drug dealer in the parking lot to get your raw dairy, or you have to buy like 1/1000th of a cow to get like a cow share. But raw dairy, so someone's had raw dairy? It's good, right? You just scrape off the dust and pick out the hair. It's amazing, right? I'm kidding. I told you. I'm going to keep trying to be funny. I promise I'm going to keep going. So they take that healthy-ish milk and they pasteurize, homogenize, they heat it up to 168 degrees. What happens to something like that when you heat it up to 168 degrees? ruins the enzymes, denatures the proteins, destroys the minerals, and it destroys it. And then they homogenize it so they make it really, really small, and that can pass through your gut at a much higher rate. So cow's milk is for calves, right? Well, what about calcium? How do we get our calcium, right? Fruits and veggies. Where do cows get their calcium? Right, they're not chasing each other around, sucking each other's teeth. Like, they get it from vegetation, right? That's where we get our calcium. We don't have a calcium absorption problem in this country. We have a calcium retention problem in this country. And it cracks me up that people are sitting around doing no exercise, taking their calcium pills. It's like sitting on your butt watching Netflix, drinking protein shakes, thinking you're going to get bigger muscles. It's ridiculous. And we're the only species of animal that actually has osteoporosis. Do you realize that? We're the only ones. And Americans are the worst. And we drink the most calcium, the most cow's milk, and we have the highest rates of osteoporosis. So it has nothing to do with that. P? So what do? So we get rid of, so how do we get milk? Because some milk is okay. So mother's milk is great, but if mom is unavailable, then almond milk, coconut milk, you can do some rice milk if you have to, but like those are your ideal forms of milk. Coconut milk is my favorite by far. And then S. What does S stand for? Nope, strawberries. Nope, sugar. Sugar, right? We beat sugar to death already. Sugar. Sugar's a big one. So here's a study. This was, and I could go for an hour on these kind of studies. I just picked a few. So a review of 170 studies from 17 nations revealed that people who eat the most fruits and veggies consistently have half the cancer rates of those who eat the least. It's documented. More than a 20% reduction in risk of colorectal cancer from the addition of 1 daily serving of vegetables. That's it. So don't tell me that fruits and veggies don't prevent cancer. That's just, the literature is chock full of it. Men who ate fresh fruit every day had a 70% less chance of dying from cancer of the digestive tract than those who ate almost no fruit. So it's on and on and on and on and on. So here's the gold standard in cancer nutrition. If you guys ever known a cancer patient, they either give this to you while you're getting your treatment or while you're eating your suckers during your chemo treatments, right? Or they give you a big 6-pack of it on your way out the door. So Ensure is garbage. Garbage. The fact that they give this to people who have cancer that's fed by the sugar that they're consuming, they're going to give them this garbage. Let's look at the ingredient list. So we've got water, that's good. Corn, maltodextrin, which is also known as sugar. We got sugar, which is sugar. Milk protein concentrate, which is garbage protein. Canola oil. Do you guys, who's heard that canola oil is good for heart health? Have you heard that? Yeah. That's American Heart Association says your canola oil is your healthy oil, right? Anyone ever seen a canola plant? No. You haven't, because it doesn't exist. It stands for Canadian Oil Low Acid. It's an acronym for genetically modified rapeseed oil, which sounds good enough, right? So genetically modified rapeseed oil, so by the time it reaches the shelf, by the time it's sitting on Kroger's rack, it's already completely rancid. It's horrific, it's awful, no place in the human home. Corn oil, soy protein isolate, which is another awful one, and you get down this other list of garbage. So that's standard cancer nutrition. And I've even had people that have had cancer that come to me and say, well, you know, my oncologist said just eat whatever. You know, just make sure you get enough calories. So that's the key. Just make sure you're just feeding the cancer enough so it comes back as quick as possible, is basically what they're telling them. How could they be so far removed from this basic science of how the body works? Yeah, he held up the money sign. I hate to think that, because I know doctors and they're great people and they want to help their patients. I don't think it's the people on the front line so much, the doctors and the nurses. I think they're good, mostly well-hearted, well-meaning people. I think it's the underbelly. It's the underbelly of the system, because there's no money in healthy people and there's no money in dead people. None. The money is in sick people who need drugs and require surgeries and who see themselves as a victim and are uneducated and unempowered. That's where the money's at. Do you think the cancer industry is going to put itself out of business?
No, they'll never be.
Probably not. Probably. There is a cure, they're just never going to talk about it. Gosh, I'm doing good on time. No, I'm not doing good on time. Gosh. So let's get through this. Your gut. Let's talk about your gut. So your gut, I need 2 volunteers. One to stand here. I'm not going to hurt you. Can I have a pen? Keep going. Now hold that right there. Kind of stretch it tight without pulling each other over. It's not tug of war. So this is the internal lining. I'm going to step behind you. Thank you. That's the internal lining of your gut. So the internal lining of your intestines and your bowels is very thin. It's very thin. It's very pliable. It's a single layer of cells. So what happens? I'll hold it up higher for the camera. Better? Good. So this single layer of cells lines the interior of the gut. But when we eat too many sugars and we eat too many grains and we have antibiotics and we're chronically inflamed and we eat all those French fries and the what's the thing from Outback? Bloomin' onions. Yeah, all that. So it creates perforations along the gut lining so then proteins can pass through the gut lining, causing a thing called irritable bowel syndrome, and it basically causes you to be septic, essentially. Your immune system attacks those things. So we have to work to repair and heal the gut. Thank you, guys. Give me a little round of applause. Awesome. So where were we? Antibiotics, meds, diets high in refined carbs, sugar, processed foods, food sensitivities like wheat and dairy, remember? Chronic stress, chronic infections. And then essential fatty acids. So the cell wall needs essential fatty acids. The outer part of your cell wall is made up of a phospholipid bilayer, which is essentially protein and mostly fat. So you need healthy fats, and the half-life of a fat is 51 days. So if you eat a trans fat, a bad fat, French fries, all this garbage, then it takes 92 days, or no, 102 days, 51, 102 days to get it out of your body. So we're paying for French fries that we ate back in, what, June or July. It's incorporated into our cells. I need you one more time. So we're going to show you what happens. So just one volunteer. Okay. Thank you, though. So I want you to hold this right here. Hold it up high. Is she tall enough for this demonstration? Do I need to lift her up? No. All right. So she's our cell. She's our healthy cell. And then this is kind of what happens. So when we eat all these bad foods, it basically creates hypoxia in the cell. So it damages the outer part of the cell wall, and it strangulates the body's ability to get nutrients in and to get toxins out. So it kind of stops that two-way line of communication. Step up just a little bit. So then Miss Arlette here eats French fries, and she eats donuts, and she eats McDonald's on the way home because her kids had soccer, so she's too busy to, really cook or get anything healthy. And then, on the weekends, we're going to have some pizza and then, hot dogs at the school picnic. And then, over and over again. I won't put this around your face, I promise. So that's kind of what happens. So we basically bind our cells with all these bad fats that get incorporated. I'm dizzy now. Get incorporated into our cell wall. So we're basically choking off and strangulating the body's ability to decrease toxins. So what do you think happens to the mitochondria that are inside that cell? They can't breathe. They get damaged. They can no longer use oxygen for fuel, so we force them to metabolize sugar, to ferment. Awesome. Good job. Can you get it? There you go. There you go. Give her a round of applause. That's great. So we got to have healthy fats. Healthy fats, healthy fats. So healthy fat. Somebody name a healthy fat. Those are the two I always get. And then it goes silent. Almonds, salmon, from healthy fish, right? Not your conventional salmon. Wild caught salmon, right? Not your farm raised salmon, right? You know what they do with the chicken coop? You know where they put the chicken coop? They put the chicken coop over top of the salmon and the tilapia farms. So they'll have a pond, and then they'll put the chicken coop on top of that. So then when they poop, it goes down into the tilapia farm, and then that's what they eat. It's like a 2-for-1, right? So tilapia is frankenfish for one, so don't ever eat tilapia. But you never want to eat farm-raised fish. Most toxic of all the toxic foods, probably worse than sugar. So essential fatty acids, omega-3s from healthy fish oil. You want to have avocados and avocado oil. When you're cooking at high temperatures, you want to do coconut oil and avocado oil. At lower temperatures, you want to do butter and olive oil. And don't ever heat butter and olive oil up too much, because when it smokes, it's rancid. So don't get it too high. Try to breeze through this. Eat butter. Can I get an amen for butter? Butter. We've been told butter's bad. That's garbage. Butter. Butter from healthy cows is actually really good. Sugar. Now, how do they know that sugar causes cancer? Well, that's how they find it, right? They do a PET scan. They do a radiographic or radionucleotide tag to a glucose molecule, and they inject you with it. And then the cancer, the tumors absorb all the sugar. Then they run you through a scanner, and they find out where all the sugar's collecting. So they know that cancer cells love sugar. They use it to find your cancer. So inflammation is the body's response to tissue damage. So what causes inflammation? You got linoleic acids. Those are your bad fats from your chips and your cookies and your crackers and your breads and your refined pastas and all this other garbage. Bad fats, safflower, corn, peanut, and soy. Sugar, toxicity, common allergens like casein and gluten, wheat and dairy, food sensitivities, and psychological and emotional stress. I really would love, we don't have the time, but I want to go get this book. So this book is called The Voice of the Heart. You read this book? Oh, changed my world. Turned my world upside right. This book in the Bible impacted me in a positive way more than any other books I've ever read. So it's essentially 1 minute quick overview. Basically based on the concept, I want you to consider the fact, or the proposition, for me it's a fact, that we're only given 8 core feelings. That's it. There's only 3 primary colors, right? Red, yellow, blue. Any argument on that? No, 3. Out of those 3 colors, how many variations of colors can we get? Like you can paint a world. There's 52 shades of green in Ireland. 52 from those 3 colors. How many musical notes are there? Like 7, 8. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, quesadilla. Right? Oh, I don't do music, right? So out of those 3 colors, you can't be an artist if you don't know the colors. You cannot do music if you don't know the notes, and you can't live a full life if you don't know the feelings. And those 8 core feelings, those 8 core emotions are sadness, anger, fear, hurt, lonely, shame, guilt, and glad. Those are given to us by God at birth to live a full life in this crazy, tragic, broken, messed up world. If we don't know what to do with our sadness, because sadness is a feeling that we have when we lose something that matters to us. Your grandmother dies, you feel sad. That's a gift from God because you lost her, she mattered to you, you value her, and now she's gone. That's a healthy feeling. If we don't know what to do with our sadness, we'll move toward the impaired version of sadness, which is self-pity, which means you feel my sadness for me. I don't want to feel it. You feel it for me, right? Let's skip anger because that's too confusing. Hurt. Hurt's a feeling, it tells us that we've been wounded, that we've been injured, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Garbage, right? Give me the sticks and stones. So hurt, if we don't know what to do with our hurt, how to process our hurt, how to heal from our hurt, then we'll move toward resentment because hurt people want to hurt people when they're unhealthy, right? Fear. If we don't know what to do with our fear, we'll move to anxiety because scared people scare people, right? See where I'm going with this? If we live our life in this left-hand column with depression, anxiety, resentment, toxic shame, pride, what do you think that does to our immune system? Shuts it down. Can you get healthy? If you're eating all the healthy food, you're doing everything else, but you're living in major resentment and unforgiveness, can you get healthy? Can you really heal? Can you have an optimal functioning immune system? No way, right? So I'm going to do a whole workshop on this one of these days, but anyway, vitamin D. Research shows vitamin D can actually kill cancer cells. I don't have time to show the video, but they actually used vitamin D in a petri dish with tamoxifen. That's one of the more common breast cancer drugs, and it killed the cancer cells as effectively as tamoxifen. It was on par with that toxic, carcinogenic, cancer-treating drug, and there's no side effects, none whatsoever. I got to breeze through this. I don't have time to watch TV. So this is a chart. I can give you guys the slides to this, by the way, at the end. So that red line indicates the medical normal for vitamin D levels. On the left-hand side, you have all these diseases, heart attacks, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, all cancers combined, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and then you have vitamin D level numbers across here. And then up here, you have what percentage could be prevented by this level of vitamin D. So you could prevent 77% of all cancers combined by getting everybody's vitamin D level up to about 38. You could prevent up to 83% of breast cancer by getting everybody's levels up to 52. Does that make sense? Yeah. This is the cutoff for normal in the medical world. So if you go to your doctor and they draw your vitamin D, which if you don't go to a doctor who routinely draws your vitamin D level, you got to find a new doctor because they are not with it. If you got to ask them, you got to go find somebody else. But their normal range is above 30. As long as you're above 30, you're fine. So say I'm at 30, what disease am I preventing? Rickets. Anybody walking around with rickets? Like bowed legs and no, nobody even has that anymore. So that's the guideline. As long as you're between 30 and 100s is what they say, but you want to be up around 80 to 90. You want to be off this chart. You want to be closer to 80 is the ideal. And we cut the risk. That is so simple, so easy. We could get everybody in America's vitamin D up in that range within 30 days. You know what happens to COVID when you get everybody's range up above 80? It's gone. I mean, mostly gone. That cytokine storm we talked about, modulated by adequate amounts of vitamin D. Low vitamin D, higher cytokine storm, and vice versa. Study out of Southeast Asia, they found that 94% of the deaths in the people that had COVID were people that had chronically low vitamin D levels. It's just over and over again. But there's no money in vitamin D. It's naturally occurring. You can buy it at the health food store. There's no drug. It's too cheap. Nobody's going to make a penny off of it. So why are they not pushing that? You decide. So we sell this vitamin D3. It's in a little dropper. We recommend getting your vitamin D level tested. Let's see where you're at. And then most people need about 8,000 IUs per day, especially between October and March when we're getting no sunshine. Because where are we supposed to get vitamin D? From the sun. We need 20 minutes every day in our bathing suit between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Every day with no sunscreen because an SPF of 8 blocks 90+% of your vitamin D production. Ain't nobody getting that. We get like the arm out the window while we're driving, right? That's it. So, 4 key principles. Your body's self-healing. We always say in chiropractic, we say the power that made the body heals the body. The power that made the body heals the body. What does that mean about your body? It means the power that's in you, the power that God put in your body when sperm and egg came together. The night after your mom and dad had that party, your sperm and egg, like everything was there. The power to make you, to grow you, to become you was in the package. That power was there. And you guys know the first organ to form in the body? Nervous system, brain. Most people say heart. It ain't the heart. Your brain forms first. That big clump of cells becomes your heart. Then it grows a tail. That becomes your spinal cord. Then you grow all these little nerves off the spinal cord. And then you get your heart and your spleen and your kidneys and your liver. Like all that grows off. It's like a tree trunk, branches, and fruit. That's the way we're designed. So that power's in you and it's never left you until you leave. So the body's self-healing. If you cut your finger, I cut my finger there. Guess what's going to happen in a day or two? It's going to heal. Sometimes or always? Always. Anyone ever had a paper cut that never healed? No. It's ridiculous, right? Your body heals. It's amazing. The things our body does without us ever having to think about it. You ever thought about the things our body does without having to think about it? Think about it. Like it's amazing, right? You heal, you cut, you sprain your ankle, it heals. You get a cold, it heals. You get COVID, 99.86% of the time, it heals, right? Your body heals itself because that's how we're made, right? And the nervous system controls all aspects of the human experience, including health. Remember, cancer and all other diseases are caused when you become what? Toxic, deficient, or you decrease function. Well, what controls function? Your nervous system. So you've got to keep your nervous system healthy if you want to maintain high levels of function. Interference to the nervous system sabotages health and life, and then our job, very simply, is to remove interference. When we do an adjustment, we're not treating your neck pain or your headaches or your back pain. We're trying to move your spine into a better alignment to remove pressure from the nervous system. So that two-way line of communication between your brain, your body, and your organs can work the way God designed it to work. That's it. Very simple. Your headaches get better. Praise God. High five. Fantastic. But that's not why we adjust you. We're not adjusting you for headaches. We're adjusting you so you can reach your potential. This part, and it's not just one essential. That's why we talk about your nutrition. We have a nutrition program called fooduniversity.tv. You guys done that? fooduniversity.tv. It's free. We don't spam you for your email, but it's an in-depth look at nutrition. So make sure you do that, and then we teach exercise, which we're going to talk about quickly in a minute. So this is the nervous system. Let me get a different volunteer. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you. So you're going to face this way. So her brain, as we speak, is sending messages down her spinal cord and then out her nerves into all her organs, all her cells, all her tissues. And what'd you come in with initially?
A lot.
A lot?
A lot of back pain.
Back pain. We'll go back pain. So, yeah, and her pelvis is out of alignment, so it's irritating the nerve that goes to her lower back. So where else does that nerve also go? It goes to the reproductive organs. It goes to, shouldn't have testes, reproductive organs. It goes to the bladder. It goes to the colon. So those nerves are controlling those organs too. Well, what the heck does this have to do with cancer? So this is a X-ray of a person who has lung cancer. So if you look at the picture, there's no cancer in this lung, and there's the tumor in that lung. So if cancer in the lungs is caused by smoking, how did it only affect that lung? If it's caused by bad genetics, how does it just go in that lung and not that lung? Because the air goes both ways, the genetics are on both sides. Don't tell me this is genetic. See how that spine is curved right there? So is there a chance, maybe, that those nerves that are controlling that lung are interfered with? Because I get people all the time that say, you know, my digestion's a mess, or I'm having high blood pressure. And I'll ask them, I'll say, well, you're having high blood pressure, how are your kidneys doing? They say, fine. How's your stomach? It's fine. How's your liver? Oh, it's fine. So why is your heart the only organ that's malfunctioning? Everything else, your body's keeping everything else working great. Why is that one organ the one thing that's not working right? What controls its function? Well, it's the nerve, right? Now, I'm not saying it's a cure-all for everything all times, but if you're going to keep those organs healthy, you need to keep the brain's ability to control them healthy. That's the bottom line. Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thank you.
You're great. Sorry to have to fast forward through this. So in this office, we use corrective care. Most of you guys are patients, so in corrective care, we use a blend of like physical therapy and rehab and neck traction and home care, so we can actually change the underlying cause of the cancer. That was the guy, a friend of mine named Charlie Majors, who had stage 4 metastatic brain cancer. He had 4 massive tumors in his brainstem that was choking off his spinal cord. So she's coughing up spinal fluid, horrible migraines. He went to the doctor. He went to Northwest Medical in Chicago. They cut him open and they said, yeah, you're done. They sewed him back up. They did no surgery, nothing. They said, you know what, you can come back and we can do chemo and radiation and maybe buy you a month or 2 or maybe 3 if you're lucky. Get your affairs in order, is what they told him. He said, yeah, I respectfully decline. So he went on a journey. He went to Spain. He went to Dr. Forsyth out in Las Vegas or Reno, and he got to the root cause. He fixed his spine. He changed his nutrition. He fixed his underlying toxic load, and he actually cured his cancer on his own. And these stories are over and over. These stories are everywhere, but you don't hear about them because they don't follow the standard of care. And even if you do follow the standard of care, does it make sense to still change your nutrition and still get adjusted and still reduce tox? Absolutely, right? So chemo ready, great, do whatever you got to do, but still get to the root cause of why you got in that pickle in the first place. When you get adjusted, it temporarily influences your interleukin-2. So you get an interleukin-2, that's the hormone or the chemical your body makes that actually kills cancer cells. Drug companies are going crazy trying to produce like synthetic interleukin-2. They can't do it, but your body does it. Your body's designed to do it. And it gets activated within just literally a few minutes of getting adjusted. Warning signs, these are just like dashboard lights on the car. It's your body's way of telling you that something's not working right. Headaches, menstrual problems, high blood pressure. If you go to the medical doctor with headaches, what are you going to get? Get a pill. If you go with neck pain, what are you going to get? Constipation, what are you going to get? Sleep problems, eczema, allergies, sciatica, numbness, Bregling. Right. That's the system we live in. And only by people planting their feet in the ground and saying, I'm not doing this and I'm going to get educated on what I really need to do, that's the only way we change healthcare. We change it with our pocketbooks. Because if we spend our money in that system thrives. If we spend our money on health and wellness and prevention, only 3% of our healthcare budget is spent on prevention. So trillions of dollars, $2 trillion every year. We spend on drugs and healthcare, what they call it. 3% of that goes to prevention. And that's why in the cancer world, they call mammograms preventative care, and they call x-rays and blood tests preventative care. Those things don't prevent, they're just early detection. Now, if I've got a fire in my house, when do I want to know about it? like now, right? So early detection has value, but it doesn't prevent anything. It just finds it earlier. So early detection is not prevention. This is Dr. Perot. He did a study with over 100 cancer patients, or healthy subjects, and he compared them to regular people and cancer people, and he found that the people that got adjusted regularly over a 5-year period had a 200% stronger immune system than those that did not have cancer, and they had a 400% stronger immune system than those people that did have cancer. And he was not a chiropractor. He did not like chiropractors, and he was not setting out to prove our theories, but he kind of accidentally did, which was great. Oxygen and lean muscle. Miss Sarah, would you come up real quick? Let me introduce you. Woo! So this is Sarah. Can you see her on camera? So Sarah is our in-house trainer, personal trainer, physical education coach. No, yeah. Tell us just a quick little snippet about you.
Education
I know
coach.
that sounded so elementary
Nice.
school.
Well, I'm Sarah. I'm super stoked to be here. I have been training since 2012, and I do in-home training, group training, and also wellness coaching. Just the importance of the health of our mind, body, and our soul. So.
You're awesome. And what are you doing for us?
What am I doing for
Yeah,
you?
the class.
Oh yeah, next week.
Yeah. So next,
Right?
what day? Do we figure?
Thursday.
Thursday?
Yep.
Thursday.
The date. What's Thursday?
It's Thursday.
November 4th at 6:30.
6:30. So November
Here.
4th at 6:30 here. First come, first serve. We're going to clear out the chairs, and she's going to take you through like a pretty basic cancer-killing workout.
All levels.
So yeah.
Scary.
Yep. So if you're an advanced CrossFitter or you haven't worked out since Reagan was in office, like this is
You're good to go.
you're good to go. And she's amazing. So thank you so much. You're awesome. You're great. All right. So, and this is Otto Warburg again. He found that the cause of cancer eventually. The cause of cancer is no longer a mystery. It occurs when the cell's denied 60% of its oxygen requirements. So how important is it to get oxygen into our cells? Like it's just, you can't do it without it. It's imperative. Exercise reduces the risk of breast cancer and breast cancer by 80%, colon cancer by 40%, endometrial, lung, and prostate cancer by 40%. And the greatest risk reduction were in the people that were the most active. And here's your yearly blood work. I don't have time to go through all these. I was going to do it detailed, but that is, if you have cancer or worried about cancer or want to prevent it, that's the yearly blood work I'd recommend everybody getting. And again, I can send you the slides. Lee, are you good? Got it? So again, the cause is the cure. So it's the toxic mindset, our inability to deal with our emotions, know how to process those, and this can-do attitude. We've seen the patients, the ones on the other side that say cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me because it allowed me to get my affairs in order and my priorities straight and really take care of my health. Like it totally reoriented their whole world. Those people tend to get better versus the ones that say, oh, why me? Oh, I'm a victim. What am I going to do? You know, woe is me. And I get it. Like cancer's terrifying. So no shame in that. But the mindset and the emotional stability makes a big difference. Nervous system, nutrition, oxygen, lean muscle, and minimizing our toxins. So I want to leave you with something real quick. So this is why. Patients come in all the time and they'll say, or I'll say, why are you here? And they'll say, well, because my neck hurts. Like I want to get out of pain. I'll say, well, why? And they'll say, well, because I'm not sleeping very good and I want to sleep better. And I'll say, why? Well, because when I don't sleep good, then I don't have any energy the next day, and then I want to have energy the next day. And I say, well, why? Just keep going, right? And really, most people have to have a big why. They have to have something that motivates them to skip the cupcakes, get out in the morning and exercise, to get your butt in here and get adjusted, to take the right supplements and invest the money and the time and the resources toward getting well. They have to have a why that's bigger than themselves. Most people will do more for others than they would ever do for themselves. Because the thing is, when the airplane goes down and the masks pop out, who do we put it on first? It's supposed to be us. It's kids. Yeah, you're supposed to put it on yourself, ideally, right? But we're all missionaries, so we're putting on our, like the guy behind us that's snoring, right? Right? But ideally we put it on ourselves, because if we go down, if we're not capable, if we lose our health, then who around us does it affect? Because when you get sick, if you have cancer, cancer is a family disease. It's not a person disease. It affects everybody. So I would implore you. So the reason I get up in the morning and work out, the reason I take the supplements I take and make sure I get adjusted is because of that right there. And I'm old, like I'm 44, and I've got a baby, right? So Medicare at college graduation, right? I've done the math. Like,
I cannot even imagine having kids.
yeah, so I've got a 14 and a 8-month, right? So I got a range. And I cannot have a man living in my house that can take me, right? I got to be in shape. I can't have another man in my house that can beat me up. So I'm going to have to stay in shape because he's going to get bigger and I'm going to have to keep it up, right? So that's the name of the game. So that's what I would leave you with. And I want to leave you with a couple things that you could start doing today that will help you tomorrow. Just a few things in this last little bit. Number one, eat fresh fiber first. So with every meal, and this is how we get people to drift downstream toward health and wellness versus struggling upstream against it, is you eat fresh fruit or fiber first. So don't change your meals. If you want to eat a bag of Krispy Kreme donuts for breakfast, go ahead. Just eat an apple first, right? If you want a cheeseburger and fries for lunch, sure, just eat a carrot first, right? One fresh fruit or veggie. Do you guys think you could do that? So if from this time till this time next year, could you eat one fresh fruit or vegetable before every meal? If you changed nothing else, where would your health be this time next year? If you just did that one little small simple thing. And it increases fiber, so you tend to eat much less of the junky food, and your body tends to crave those healthier foods over time. So fresh fruit or fiber first. And then with exercise, you don't have to exercise. You don't. But what I would ask you to do is put on your gym clothes and go outside and just stand there in your gym clothes and breathe for 30 minutes. So you don't have to work out. You just got to stand outside for 30 minutes and breathe in your gym clothes. And you got to lay them out the night before so that you don't kind of talk yourself out of it. You kind of, you get yourself out there. And then after a while, you're going to be like, this is ridiculous. I'm outside. I'm awake. I've already got my clothes. I'm going to walk, right? So that's all you got to do, right? And then start slow and then build up. So this is a game of progress, not perfection. It's progress. Like all this seems overwhelming. Like how the heck am I? Just do little small steps one at a time. And then begin and end each day with gratitude. That's one thing. If you can bookend your day with gratitude, it'll change your entire life. And if you have trouble finding gratitude, just know that there's over 1 million families in Egypt that are raising their kids on a trash heap. They literally raise their kids in a trash dump. And as bad as we think America is, and we're all messed up or whatever, we've got it so much better than most cultures. So begin and end each day with gratitude. And then the things you're grateful for will move you toward making some of these changes and toward the health you deserve. So that's all I got. I'll stick around for Q&A. Thank you guys so much. God bless.